All right. Hello, hello. Happy Friday, everybody. Not Baby Friday today. It's for actual Friday. So thanks for everybody joining us. And as y'all know, too, again, with the panel, we do have that delay when the comments come in from everybody watching versus when they show up. So just keep that in mind as you're asking questions and putting things up. But if y'all have questions, go ahead and load them in now. Get started. We're going to start with just some general introductions and then some questions around, and then we'll go to attendees' questions, as we have time. And I see already we've got Eileen in from North Carolina. Hey, Eileen, nice to have you again. And really glad to have everybody here. We're going to be talking about networking today, and the importance of it, different ideas about it, and stuff like that. So we'll kick off because you're directly next to me. We've got our Brady Bunch squares up too. So we'll start over there with Christine Hall. Christine, if you would like to introduce yourself and let everybody know where you're coming from and how you've gotten where you are today.
Well, thanks, Betty. I'm Christine Hall, and we were just having this talk offline about how long we have been in the industry, each one of us. And I've been in this industry a while, a few decades. Let's just put it that way. Long enough to know that this is where my passion is. So that's the big thing, is I've had the pleasure of working in this industry my entire career. So I've worked with compliance, billing, coding, auditing, risk adjustment, practice management, like just about every possible area in this industry. Right now, I'm also teaching coding and billing and risk adjustment and auditing. Yeah, all of that. So I get to
come on, Christine. Can't you do more?
I know, my poor husband, he says that all the time, and he's like, learn to say when. When what? So yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I own Sterling Global Solutions. I am the senior consultant here, and we provide education and coding consulting all over the country. We also do a little bit of compliance consulting, making sure that everyone's doing the right thing. And I think that's kind of a little bit of all of us. We do a little bit of that, right?
Yeah.
Sonal, you're doing some consulting now with compliance as well, right?
That's correct. Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Sonal Patel. So like Christine was saying, yes, I am a consultant at Acevedo Consulting Incorporated. And we were talking offline, and I'm one of the youngest in the panel who have been in
You're
this.
A baby.
Not in terms of age, in terms of longevity in this field. I'm at year number 12 compared to all of you who have decades in, right? So this is actually my second career in my life. So kind of unusual. I'm sure we'll come to that at some point in the conversation, but absolutely. In the everyday work I do, it's a gamut of everything, right? Coding, compliance, some billing, the reimbursement, appealing, working with attorneys. It's all of that. So I love what I do. And in terms of networking, which I know we're going to dive into this conversation, but when I started in 2008, 2009, I'm not going to blame anybody. It was the economy, right, that had tanked at that point. So networking for me personally was really difficult. So I really enjoy helping others, new people now, try and come up in the field simply because I didn't have that when I had started. So that's a little bit about me.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Vanessa, we'll go down to you next.
I am Vanessa Moldovan. I have been in physician revenue cycle for 25 years this year. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It is pretty much what I breathe, eat, drink, and breathe these days. But I'm also the creator and host of the podcast For the Love of Revenue Cycle. Not for the love of reimbursement, for the love of revenue cycle. And then I also have since we're talking about networking, I also have a corresponding Facebook group, also called For the Love of Revenue Cycle. And it's a wonderful place for networking for those who are involved in the revenue cycle.
Vanessa, I'm so sorry. I put that up wrong.
That's okay.
I thought I was being so good too.
It's okay, truly. Not a big deal. But I'm really excited about this conversation today because networking has been a very big part of the success that I have, and actually the reason that I started the social media platforms that I have. So I'm really looking forward to talking more about it.
Great. And then Brian, our coding geek.
Hey everybody. Gosh, it's been a long day, but I'm trucking on here, so I'm gonna do my best. But my name is Brian Cui. I see some familiar names here. Alvin, Barbara. I think I know I connected with you guys on LinkedIn, and plus we've also LinkedIn also with Sonal, and Christine. And I'm meeting you two for the first time here on this broadcast. So thank you for having me. Where could I even begin? I mean, you guys know me. I could talk for an hour and a half, but whatever it be. But I've had to keep this short. Let's see, NEC podcast. But even before that, Medical Coding Geek, I was at a point 9 years as a CDI specialist, where I felt like, I need to do something different. And so that's where tutoring came into play. But then for some reason, it evolved into what's called Medical Coding Geek. And I am not necessarily the Medical Coding Geek. I think what I created was the Medical Coding Geek, where it was more of an initiative for coders to get together. And so from that point, it kind of grew into Facebook groups. So it started with one. Now it's Medical Coding Geeks, RHIA, RHIT Exam Support Group, CDI Network. I have another one, CEU Hit List. There's a bunch of groups that kind of just evolved from that. And I think from the Medical Coding Geek, the Facebook group, it evolved into the NEC podcast, which is the abbreviation for Not Elsewhere Classified. If you don't know what that is, that's basically just a abbreviation for coding that I said, you know what, let me just make this in a podcast. And I think the purpose of the podcast was simple, was just an excuse for me to connect with professionals, ask them questions. It was a great opportunity for me to network. And 4 years later, 100 episodes later, I have a really good portfolio. And I think, Christine, you were the last.
Yay,
you were the last guest. You were the last guest on the podcast, I believe. And I'm looking. I took a break because after working in CDI, I moved into auditing, DRG clinical validation auditing. I spent 4 years as an auditor. Got recently promoted as a team lead supervisor. So that's been eating up most of my time. Because the last time I was a supervisor, it was 16 years ago. So it's kind of like, okay, what do I do as a supervisor? And so what's funny is that all the stuff that I've done in the Facebook groups and the podcast, it now carries over into the supervisory role, because basically every day I am performing a podcast with my employees. That's it.
Oh, that's nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's what I like about education. And I have my own podcast as well. I have a Coding with Christine Hall. And I like to take these complicated issues and just chat about them, because I think sometimes we get the official explanation, but what does that mean? How do we understand that in lay terms? How do we understand it if we're, we don't have that master's in college and we're trying to understand, what do you mean when you say or part thereof, right?
Yeah.
So I like to have conversations that just explain it and make it simple. So I understand what you mean about wanting to do something so that you could meet with people and talk with people about what you're doing. And this is exactly how we move into those next roles.
Yeah.
Yep. Wonderful. Well, thanks everybody for the intros. Now let me see, look at the comments. So we've got Jessica in from Seattle. We have somebody from Virginia. So yeah, we have people from all over, which is great. So we're going to work into my first question. So I just made up a couple topic questions for those of y'all that are watching, and just for us to kind of share our thoughts with each other and with y'all. And then for as I said before, for y'all to be able to ask us any questions that you want while you have us confined here for this time and have us in a group, which is why I love doing, panels. I had my my old hens panel that we did, and it was the same kind of thing. It's having the different viewpoints and different ideas, and somebody may have done something that I didn't do, or I hadn't thought of doing. And so, I just like when we can do things like this too. So our first question that I put out there was about, networking, because that's what we're talking about today. So, how has networking helped you in your career, to help move up and get where you're going? For me personally, we were chatting before we went live, and when I first was certified, my AAPC number has like 5 zeros in front of it, because it's from that long ago. And when I first got in and took the exam and got certified, there still weren't anybody that was designated or called a coder at the workplace. I think insurance clerk or something was the name that they had for us back then. So it wasn't even really, looked at as the profession that it is today and understood like it is today. And so and back then we didn't have all the social media stuff and all this kind of stuff that we have too. So it was a little bit harder. So as I got older, more mature, and worked in, then, I got involved with the AAPC a little more, started a local chapter in my area, because we didn't have one, and I didn't want to keep driving 40 minutes just to go sit in a meeting, because back then, again, no virtual meetings, you had to actually go. So that got old. And so I started a chapter, and then the people started coming, and I was a PMCC instructor, so doing things like that. And then just applied and was on the National Advisory Board, and then that kind of opens up people coming to you and talking to you, and it just kind of grew from there for me. Any of y'all want to throw in here on how it helped you, kind of move in?
Well, I would say that I didn't have a career until I started networking, to be honest. I think that the nature of what we all do in this particular field, the business of healthcare, I think it really needs networking. So many of the roles that we take on in the business world, it's who we know, not what we know. There's a lot of people who come to us who are, I just got my certification, now I'm trying to find a job, but everybody wants experience, but I have no experience. Like it's the old story we hear all the time. So networking is so essential, I think, for the field that we're in. So after I got my certification with APC, I started going to chapter meetings, and it was actually after. So I'm naturally not a outgoing social person, especially in big crowds. I tend to go to the back of the room and just observe. And people approached me and asked me to volunteer to be an officer. And that was really kind of what changed things. I was like, okay, I guess I could organize these meetings. And, but then once I got into the role of being president, kind of like how you were saying, Betty, where people started approaching me. And then I saw how helping these people out and helping them to network and helping them to get connections. And, well, I know this person and these organizations. And it just kind of took off, from there for me. And when I really felt that power of engagement. And so I value the connection. I'm not drawn toward it naturally. It's gotten easier, over the years, but I definitely encourage it and I value it, that you need that connection with people in your field and who have common interests. And so, I also did a stint on the National Advisory Board, and that also helped with getting my feet in the door with different opportunities for sure. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be where I am today. I mean, the job that I have today, which is my ultimate dream job, I got because of my Facebook group and my podcast. So, I 1,000% am supportive of putting yourself out there, even if you're an introvert like me and it doesn't come naturally, just following what you believe and what you feel strongly about and what your gifts are. You just keep going in that direction. And putting yourself out there. And, I always tell my daughter, I'm like, you don't wait to prepare yourself until the opportunity comes to you. You prepare yourself waiting for that opportunity. So you get
That's
yourself
great.
Because that opportunity is going to come to you. So you take those steps and you make that preparation, you put yourself out there and you talk to people, and the opportunity will come.
And that's interesting that you said that, because I saw Brian, when you said about being an introvert, he kind of pointed to himself, and I'm the same way. And I wonder, it's so you don't have to be like the biggest person in the room, or when you walk in, it's, like a gab fest from Go and all that kind of stuff. Because I'm, if I'm not speaking or presenting somewhere and I'm attending things, I'm the same way. I'll, they could have like the networking luncheon or whatever, and I'm, I was happy to sit by myself and, just do my own little thing. So you don't have to be the big blustery person to, move up and get yourself into positions of kind of things that we're doing. It does become more comfortable. I remember the biggest group I presented to, I did one of the like keynotes at one of the AAPC conferences, and I think there were like 1,500 people in the room. So and once I started, because everybody said, "Oh, how could you do that?" Oh my God! I said, "Well, first of all, you had those lights shining in your face. You can't really see anybody." But after you start talking, it's just like I don't care who's there. It doesn't matter how many people are there. I get into what I'm doing, and that kind of just melts away, at least for me. So, but yeah, and I saw Christine, you shaking your head about the introvert thing, and Sonal, I don't know how you feel.
Yes, I'm the same.
I'm an introvert, though. I'm definitely, I think I'm very comfortable with people. I'm very comfortable being out there. Maybe I'm too comfortable. I don't know.
I'm comfortable with it too. I'm very comfortable. I have no problem presenting. I have no problem being in public.
Oh yeah.
I'm very comfortable with it. I'm just not drawn to it. Like if somebody was like, go to a networking event or sit at home and read a fantastic book, I would go with B. Like I'm just not really, naturally drawn to it. Of course I will do it, and I have definitely gotten comfortable with it over the years. And like Christine, there are some times where people have asked me, like, I just don't differentiate between people, a title or number of certifications, or as far as how I'm going to treat them or how I'm going to behave around them. And I've had people ask me, like, I think you're a little too comfortable. I'm like, well, a person is a person. And I think one of the questions here was advice for somebody who's shy and nervous about approaching on networking. And I think that that's one way to look at it, is everybody is the same, regardless of their title, regardless of their experience, and we were kind of talking about this beforehand, right? That some people come up to us and like, "Are you the Betty Hovey?" And you're like, "I don't know if I'm the only one, but it's just regular people." And to keep that in mind, if you are shy, just ask the question. We're people like everybody else.
Let me tell you about. I want to answer that question. So. I remember my first presentation for a state association in Florida that I addressed that same question. And so in the presentation, I showed myself, I wish I had the pictures, but I have middle school pictures with me in braces, sitting with a head of hair and a trumpet in my hand. And I said, that was me. That was me in middle school. And, going into college, it was a transition, I'm sure, for most people, transitioning from a high school post-secondary to college. And so that was a big transition. And so one of the things that I got thrown into, I think that's just been my career, just thrown into things, or things fall in my lap. And then you're like, what do you do? Okay, I need to do something about this. And so one of the things that came onto my lap was the creation of the Asian Student Union for Florida International University. And they're still running strong since 1998. And so, I was drawn to, I didn't know what to do. And so I went through the steps, and they told me you have to conduct meetings. And I'm like, wait, I have to conduct meetings. I have to get in front of strangers and do this stuff. And then it evolved into working with the University of Miami and creating more cultural events and hosting those events. And so, I think when you get thrown into it, I think the answer to that question is practice. Just like anything else, you need to be doing it. If you avoid it, you will not get better at it.
That's
funny,
true. Well,
Brian.
and they,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just, and they have, Toastmasters and, organizations like that where you can hone your skills at, speaking and things. So at least I think they still have Toastmasters, don't they?
Yes, they do.
I was going to say, am I aging myself where people are just like, what? I've done that
I
before.
remember my local Toastmasters. We're still live and kicking.
Okay. All right, let me see. And then we have,
One of the things, Betty, that I liked about that question that you had, networking, helping the career, is I really believe that not one person can possibly know everything in this industry. We go from inpatient, outpatient, we have all these different areas. But oftentimes people will feel comfortable coming and asking me a question that is out of my field. So they'll ask a question like, I choose not to play with the facility side. So I love the pro fee side, but people will come up and ask you a facility question, and I'll say, I don't know the answer to that, but let me call my friend Vanessa. She knows what. And Vanessa, you had something the other day that you reached out to me. You were like, Christine, go answer this.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Right.
Yeah, but don't reach out to me for inpatient. I just
but
all the people listening.
I used to give an example, but just to say that we could. And so from a career perspective, I think we're really blessed that people do feel comfortable coming to us and asking us questions, and networking has just become how we solidify that foundation of knowledge. And so I don't know, but I know somebody who does and who has that level of knowledge of it that they can help you with.
Yeah. And Jessica makes a good point here, that it truly takes a village and everybody interprets things differently. So love having peers to bounce things off of and mentor others as well. So that's a great comment.
We learn things every day. One of my recent students is on today. And I'll tell you that I learned from her. So Guadalupe, I know you're there. And even when she was in my class, there were things that she's in different areas of her career that she was able to share with me, and things that I was able to share with her. And so I think, really that connection with everyone and appreciating what everyone's knowledge is, that's the whole key to networking.
Yep. All right, so this is a question that I get asked a lot, and I struggle with, to be honest with you myself, sometimes about, should you, like on LinkedIn, should you just connect with anybody that's there, or should you be selective? And my caveat to that, I have recently begun to get a lot of people that wanted to connect, and so I was very, yeah, sure, connect. And then I started getting I'm a naval officer, and you looked very nice in your picture. And I'm just like, seriously?
Alexis got a marriage proposal last month. Yes, on LinkedIn.
So, I mean, you do have those odd kind of things, but Sonal, what's your take on that? Do you think people should be selective about who they connect with? Or, barring the trolling kind of odd person that comes up.
Exactly. You need to be smart and avoid folks like that. But for the most part, I think it's incredibly important to connect, right? You have to reach out, and that's the only way you can build your supportive group of like-minded people. I think that's what LinkedIn and this platform of social media has really propelled. And I also think it's grown tremendously in this pandemic, right? It's just boomed.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really good to connect with people who want to get into coding, who are experienced in the billing world, in rev cycle, in compliance, people who are attorneys. If you're lucky to have a physician or a 10 in your network, that's amazing. Just avoid those scary naval types of people.
Can I tell you a story to answer that question? Really?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I'm looking at Pam Vanderbilt. She says Tony, right? So,
Uh-oh. I know where you're going with
and
this.
this
Thanks,
involves
Pam.
this
Thanks for
involves.
bringing that up.
You're ready? So,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay.
Let it
So, should you connect with anyone? And so I've built my LinkedIn profile and following. I think it's what like 4,000 or something like that. And so I know who to connect with, who not to connect with. And the story goes with me and Christine. How I connected with Christine was she actually reached out to me, and I think she put in a message like, something to connect with me. But then she put a message, but she referred to as, she put, "Hi, Tony." And so I'm like, "Who's Tony?" And I'm like, "Are you sure you're connect?" Then I played around with them, and let me work with this, right? So let me see if they're, if either she's trying to market me with some template or something like that. And I said, "You know what? Tony, are you sure you're connecting with the right person?" Then she corrected herself. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't notice it was Tony. I should have changed it, but it was Brian. I know you. I follow you. I do this." And I'm like, okay. You're off the hook, that type of situation. So that's the joke between me and Christine.
Well, I like to send a personal message back. And with Brian, I got so excited that Brian had connected with me. Kind of like, are you the Brian Quee, right? That I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm such a fan. And anyway, Tony, you're okay with that, right?
Yeah, you call me Tony. What is it? In another podcast, you referred me as Brad Pitt. I'm like, I don't know if I'm Brad Pitt. No,
I did call you Brad Pitt at one point. Yes. Trying to ease over that whole Tony thing, right?
I personally don't filter too many of my requests on LinkedIn. And on Facebook, I'm very, very, very careful because I feel like that's an entirely different.
Yeah.
There's an entirely different motivation for being on Facebook, right? Facebook was created for more personal connection. And, unfortunately, to have a Facebook group, you have to have a Facebook profile. So, so I am careful, with that. And that those connections are very specific. But on LinkedIn, for me, it's a professional environment. I don't have any personal contact information that's out there. And I, through the research I've done, there aren't kind of the quote unquote dangers that there are on Facebook. Sure, people can get weird. And it's like, okay, you just disconnect or unconnect or whatever it's called. And it's over with, if they get a little weird. Personally, I think those are kind of one-offs, the ones that are, get creepy or, ask inappropriate questions. But what I have found is really interesting is, I'm now on the software side of revenue cycle. I work for an organization that provides revenue cycle solutions. And the people who work for software companies are very far from the people I've known for the last, 25 years in healthcare operations and billing and, revenue cycle. And, if I hadn't accepted a connection just because somebody was in software, my life could be different today, and there are other fantastic conversations that I've had with people based on having a podcast. Like, oh, I see that you do a podcast, just based on interests that I'm involved in. I see that you're involved, you're connected with several career groups. And so people connect just with career. I don't know anything about their career, but they're like, hey, I say you've made these career choices. So I don't really ever say no. I will always give somebody at least one conversation. If I'm like, this is not going to work, but I just kind of feel like, and I also, what I found to be completely transparent, what I found myself doing was reviewing somebody's profile, looking at their picture, going to the background. And I was like, oh, and I was making all of these judgments based on a social media profile. And I was like, you know what? I would never want someone to do that to me. I would want them to actually get to know me and then decide whether they want to connect or not. So I stopped doing that and just was like, if somebody reaches out, I feel, there isn't any immediate creepiness because of the question or whatever, I connect. And I have found that to be personally beneficial. That's my story.
Yeah, Jessica put in that she tries to see who the mutual connections are and look at their page because she's watched too many catfish episodes. But yeah, I think, I have, and in doing, like with what all of us with our podcast and our broadcast, Sonal and I, we met at the NEMAS convention, face to face in December for the first time, but she had seen my broadcast and made a mention of that, like, oh yeah, I thought, you looked a little familiar, that kind of thing. And so it's, grown to where I've been on her podcast, now she's on here, and so you just keep kind of growing things that way. So I think social media has really allowed us to connect in ways that we couldn't, a couple decades ago, even 5-10 years ago, in the field, because it was always, you would see people at a convention, meet them, try to take each other's emails, and, that'd be about it, or phone calls, but now, you can FaceTime and chat and, do things like this to where it's a lot easier to grow your network, by doing things like that, and just going to watching broadcasts, listening to podcasts, and things like that on LinkedIn just helps greatly to expand your network for people that are looking to do that.
Well, Betty, I have one. You have a question on that you had sent about how should someone get into networking, and it's funny that you're talking about this. Something else that I started doing, and it wasn't because of me. I'm going to give total props to Caitlin Brock. She's works at APC, and she called me up one day and said, let's have lunch. And I said, that's great, but you live in Indiana and I live in Florida. She goes, that doesn't matter. So I noticed that my friend Annette Bush is on here. She and I had lunch together, and she lives in Indiana and I live in Florida, and we're able to do that now. So it's a whole different type of networking. We're not just limited to the people that are within driving distance. We can.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Christine, but my battery's dying. So I just want to say I had to. So I have to get up so that this doesn't die. But keep going, and I'll be right back.
No, I was just saying, to even start there, start something small and have lunch. Mm-hmm. And no, we're not eating in front of each other or anything like that, but just taking that 1 hour of time during the day that you're going to stop and you're going to connect with somebody and you're going to have a conversation. Face-to-face is great because you really get to know somebody that way. Mm-hmm. So that's another idea. If you want to learn how to get into networking, why don't you message Vanessa and ask her what she's doing for lunch, Monday afternoon. For sure. And Brian and Sonal, maybe they're open to having lunch with you too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And this question here, tips for new people, that's a really great suggestion for, especially if you're new to your industry, new to the field, just, making that first question, stepping out, asking for the first time. And then what Brian was saying as well, practice, and you'll get better at it and you'll feel more comfortable and, getting out there, more experienced in the field, networking. I think what's helpful is if you already have certifications, a good way to connect is on LinkedIn. If you just search for your certification, and you can find second, level connections with other people you might already be connected with, or people who you don't even know that you work with who have those same certifications. When you reach out, LinkedIn now has the ability where you can add a note. Like, you don't have to have the premium anymore. You remember you used to have to have the premium to send a message when you wanted to connect. Now you don't have to. And you just add a note and you're like, hey, notice we both have the same certification or work for the same company or whatever it is, that, we both like the same sparkling water. Like, I don't know, whatever it is that starts the conversation. Exactly. There you go. Yeah. That's how you start your network. You just reach out and you're like, hey, we have this in common. Let's chat.
Great. Yeah.
So the tips for new people, or just even experienced, for me, the networking piece didn't happen for me until I started the podcast. Because at a point, I think going back a couple questions back, how did you get started in networking? It didn't come into my lap, but I think for Vanessa, you said it was at the beginning of your career. It happened in the middle of my career. and my career was stuck. It was so stuck because, and I talk about this a lot on LinkedIn, where there was a point in time in CDI where they're only hiring nurses, and me with an HIM background with 9 years of experience with that CDIP credential that you were asking about, I couldn't go nowhere. So, I became very vocal about this, and I just started to, I created the podcast. I connected with people. That became my networking opportunity because I went to like people who I never thought I would talk to. And I say, hey, I did that. I sent them a message. I'm like, hey, I'm interested in you. You want to have a conversation? And they're like, wait, you're interested in me? Really? And so people are really flabbergasted when you ask that question and you tell them I'm interested in learning more about you. I think when you put it in that direction versus who they are, but more interested in who they're all about. And so I took that direction and I interviewed just a regular person. And then I asked for that person to give me 2 other people. And those 2 other people gave me 2 other people. And so that's how it worked. And that portfolio in the podcast kind of created itself. And it just created really a networking schedule for me because every week I had somebody to talk to. And then I said, you know what? I'm just going to record this. And I'm just going to put it out there. And then because it was sent out there, it just blew up. I mean, something. Yeah. I mean, when you think about that, it's just like I didn't intend to do that. It was a selfish reason for myself because I was stuck and because I had a problem and I was looking for a resolution. Podcasting was my way. And so, I highly suggest, with experienced people, if you're stuck, start to connect. But most importantly, what gets you to network is content. And so if you start to create content, then you share the content, pay it forward, send it out, let people know what you think. And I think when people listen to you, especially on podcasts, when they watch you on video, it's like they're not really, again, interested in your career. Like, oh, Brian's cool or Christine's cool, Sonal's cool, like, hey, I want to, they're good people. I think they're very approachable. And let me go and connect with them. And that creates another connection. And guess what? You want to be on the podcast? That's my next question, always an opportunity. So, Christine says, about lunch. For me, my lunch is podcast episodes because I cannot go nowhere. I'm busy, and I need to do things. But my podcasting is my lunch. It's literally has become my business card, as you mentioned, Betty. I swear I still have my student business cards from when I used to be in school because they taught you how to print those out. I had the whole box and I was just like, whatever. But now, now LinkedIn is your business card. How can I get connected with you, Brian? Oh, just find me on LinkedIn. My last name is very easy to find, you can find me anywhere. So that's how it works. I mean, it's the way of technology now. It allows you to network better. But I think, with any technology, you have to learn how to leverage it. And then the thing with technology now is it's all about content. That's why we have podcasts. That's why we have YouTube videos. That's why we have these broadcasts now. It's now we have to evolve as professionals, and our networking has to evolve as well.
Absolutely. I just want to let everybody know. Oh, she's back. Vanessa's internet crashed. So let me see if I can get her back in.
One thing that you just said, Brian, that was really cool is pay it forward. I think that for the experienced ones, tips for experienced people, remember that there was somebody along the way that helped you in some way, and pay that forward. Be that person for somebody else. Keep it moving. Keep it going forward. So.
Yeah, that's a great tip. How about you, Sonal?
That's exactly right. That's exactly why I do so much content creation on LinkedIn, is because I want to pay it back. I want to give back to the people who are just starting. That's exactly right. You have to give, right, to all of those that are coming up. We need the next generation of people to replace us, right? Because we're not going to be around for forever. We want the next wave of people to be incredible in this unique, space. It's an amazing, small world. So I think that's an incredible thing that we can do to give back.
And I think that's a great point, Sonal. Posting. Yeah, LinkedIn is great to see what others are putting out there and to keep up to date with certain things or find out what's going on somewhere. But if you want people to think about you, or to go, oh, I saw something you posted, and then they want to connect or they make a comment, and then you go, oh, I don't know this person, let me connect with them. So I know, Sonal, you're pretty good about posting. You try to schedule posting time, right? Where you're posting every day. Yeah.
I make it a part of my day. I've been doing this for years, so you have a full-time job, but I also make it a point to, carve out time every evening to set up my LinkedIn post for the next day. Because you also, I think it was Brian that was saying, you have to be able to leverage LinkedIn. They have an algorithm and whatever. So when you post at a certain time of day, more people see it, right? Instead of if you post at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a limited number of people in your wheelhouse that can see it. So there's a lot of algorithmic things that happen, but it can go really, really far if you know how to use LinkedIn.
Now, let me tell you the technological aspect for LinkedIn. It's your network, right? Yeah. So the tip, and I think Vanessa can chime in too, is the key to LinkedIn is to get people with a lot of people, right? Yes. Yeah. And so the stronger their connection, you could actually leverage their connection, meaning that, for example, if you post something about yourself, I think you got to post yourself in a light I'm with it. You have a passion. I think that's the key. If you're not complaining, I can't find a job, I got no experience, nobody's gonna help you. But if you're passionate about the job, if you're passionate about the career, people will feed off of that. And so people will, for myself, if I see that, in a young professional, I'm gonna like it. I'm gonna comment. You know what happens when I do that? It goes to my feed. It goes to my feed of 4,000 people. They like it. It goes to their feed of 5,000 people. It goes to their feed of 10,000 people. That's how that algorithm works. It's wonderful as long as you know what to post and how to leverage it as well.
Yeah, when I'm training on LinkedIn and how to use it for networking or finding a career, helping in your career, one of the things that I advise people is that LinkedIn is it's your virtual handshake. So to think about, if you were in an elevator or in a hallway or something like that, and someone came up to you and was like, hey, tell me about yourself. LinkedIn should be a snapshot of who you are, of what your interests are, what your passions are, what your background is. And you wouldn't walk up to somebody and say, hey, my name is Vanessa and I'm begging for a job. That's not, and if you did, you would get a certain response, So, you gotta, kind of piggybacking what Brian was saying, complaining and kind of being negative, that's not going to attract people into your network, So really think of it as this is my handshake. This is my opportunity to introduce myself and show my intentions and put myself out there.
Vanessa, I wanted to piggyback right there. When you do that virtual handshake, 2 very important things that you should already know about yourself, right? Here we go. Know what your strengths are. Know exactly where you can help someone else, but then also know where you need support. Yeah. So those are the 2 things that you can reach out to somebody is, I'm very strong in this one particular area. And let's see if I can help you with that. And then, hey, I need some support in another area. And maybe you might know somebody that can plug that hole for me and continue the network cycle. Like Brian said, ask 2 more people. Here's my strength and here's where I need support. Yeah. So you utilize that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think another key is don't be afraid to ask. I think that's what's holding a lot of people back is the fact that, they see somebody out there like myself and they feel intimidated. I'm like, why do you even feel intimidated? Because the conversations that we have here, guess what? When you call me, it's the same exact thing. Yeah. Right. When they say, well, what is this podcast is going to be like? It's the same exact thing. If you're calling me, if we meet on the street, it's going to be the same thing. The energy that I give, I'm real. I don't pretend. You know, I there's nothing that I need to show off. I mean, I just need to be myself.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest advice that I gave to one of my auditors who had transitioned to a senior auditor role as a trainer. And she's like, you know, what do I do? I'm a new person in this new field and this new department. What do I do? Be yourself.
Yep.
I like things and attributes about yourself. It's the reason and what got you to the next level. So please carry that forward.
Yeah, Jessica put a really good comment. Oh, sorry. Jessica put a really good comment here. So I just wanted to pull it up that closed mouths don't get fed.
Yeah.
So yeah, great.
I was going to say, I would love to see the answers that we all had for some of these thoughts that we had that you put out there, Betty. Because as everyone is talking, it seems that we are all on the same page. I answered mine very similar to exactly how you are all sharing this information.
Yeah, and that's something to take notice of, you know, that when people are, you know, which brings up this next comment about mentoring, you know, finding people with like minds, you know, with maybe different skill sets too, as we've all been talking, because you want to grow your network to where it's like, oh, who do I know that does this? Oh, I know, you know, I was doing, I'm doing an audit right now for a neurology practice, and they had stuff on the you know, ambulatory EEGs that, you know, they do for like 3 and 4 days. And I'm like, you know, so I'm looking through all this stuff and I'm like, okay, you know, the E&M stuff, yeah, you know, I'm like, no problem. And I'm looking at, you know, page after page of documentation for the services she's billing, and you're talking about, you know, tens of thousands of dollars in a claim there. And I'm like, maybe another eyeball on this would probably not be a bad idea. You know, who can I call, you know, so you reach out to people for stuff like that. But the person that I reached out to that assisted me, you know, is somebody that I know and that I know knows what they're doing, and that kind of, so, you know, just doing that thing, you find people like that you can, you know, grow into and grow with and do things and share things with, from, you know, being of you know, this kind of like mind, you know.
Did I not reach out to you yesterday?
Yes, you did.
Oh, I have
a
dermatology audit that I am just not loving, and reached out to Betty. Please tell me I'm not crazy. Please tell me. What do you think? Yeah, you know, because we need each other.
Yep. And it's good, you know, like I said, you know, that's one of the big pluses, I think, for, you know, being in it today versus the, you know, 10 to 15 or 30 years ago, you know, for me, is, you know, you would email somebody and just pray that they emailed you back, you know, because there was no, you know, or you would call them, get a voicemail, leave a message, leave another message, leave it, you know, it's like, I promise I'm not stalking you. I just really would like it, you know, but there was no way to check. Not that I stalk people on LinkedIn, but I mean, you know, you can see when they're, I might be giving up the wrong vibe here. So, you know, you can, you know, see when they're active, what they're doing on LinkedIn, when you're more active and out there. You know, you couldn't do those things, you know, years ago when we didn't have these kinds of platforms. And so I think it's just really, really helped us connect so much more, and allowed people to have, you know, networks that have thousands of followers and things like that, like everybody here does, you know, and that, I think, it's a direct result of that, which brings me to the mentoring thing. You know, I told a little story while we were still behind the scenes, in the backstage, in the green room, whatever you want to call it. I've had people approach me before and ask me, you know, would you be a mentor? Would you mind doing this? Is this something you would consider? And, you know, when I've agreed to it, I've had people then that don't follow up, then I don't hear from them again. You know, they get my information, they, you know, connect, and then that's it. You know, so I'm happy to do things like that. And I think, as Sonal was saying, we've got to bring up the next group, because, this old hen at some point, is going to, quit flying around the coop. I'm going to be, I hope I won't be somebody's dinner, but, yeah. So y'all, what do y'all think about the mentoring ideas?
That was your question, Sonal. So go, you start it.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the mentoring, right? I mean, I think I said in my little intro about myself, I didn't have any mentors when I started in this field. So, what I'm blessed to do now is when folks reach out to me and we have conversations, I happily take their calls, right? I connect with them on LinkedIn. And then I set up a phone call with them, and I really want to spend time with them, right? And hear what it is that they're trying to do, right? What it is that they want, whether they're starting right in the beginning, they're still in school, and then they're done with school, they're trying to get a job, something in between. I spend time with them. At the end of that conversation, it's about having them draft a resume, right? That's something that people don't really have in place. So I try and tell them my best, tips on what needs to be written down for what their goals are, right? What type of a company do they want to get into, or a practice, or a hospital setting? What type of position, right? What are their goals? And then, of course, you have to try and advise people. Like I was telling Brian Quee on my first podcast with him 2 years ago, right? And I had disclosed that, and I'm going to tell all of us here now, that I literally thought, again, for my first career, I thought that resume would get me into healthcare. No, right? But I literally thought a humanities resume would get me into a hospital setting, right? Of course. And I just kept beating my head against the wall, like, why isn't this working? Why does no one want me?
What's wrong with those people?
What's wrong with those people? I'm amazing. No, it was that resume, right? So when you try and guide people, you have to, set them up with the right foundation. And that really goes a long way. And so a lot of people do end up having a placement somewhere, and then I hear back from them eventually, right, about their good news. And so that's something that I value, that person had the courage. Like we said, it is kind of scary, but why? It's just us. We are just human beings. There's no accolades. There's nothing. It's just some certifications behind our name. That's it. But we're just real people who started in this field as well at some point in time. And we really are at a point in all of our careers that we want to give back. And so I think that is the key, is you have to be willing to open yourself up, reach out to seasoned, experienced people, and hear what they have to say, because I'm sure all of us have some different opinions and some guidance that can take you in a whole new direction. So I think it's amazing that we're having this conversation for everybody today, because I think everybody on this chat box can take away a lot of different things from all of our talking points here. So I think mentoring is amazing in today's space, with so many of us that want to give back.
Mm-hmm. And I just, before I pull up a comment, I just want to tell you, Sonal, as we're going through this broadcast now, and when I was guesting on your podcast, and when I listened to your podcast, your voice, I don't know what the tone or the I just love listening to you speak. You just have such, just it is the tone and the nice and even and the quality of it. You have a beautiful voice.
Well, thank you. I loved our session together, and I think you must have had the banner up, but I was too busy talking about myself. Paint the Medical Picture podcast is my podcast.
Yes.
So
yes, I did.
You'll find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere.
Okay. Let me tell you something about Sonal. She's come a long way with podcasting. And so she started it because she was on my podcast.
Yes.
And so if you listen to that podcast episode, paint the medical picture, right? And you'll understand why it's called Paint the Medical Picture when you listen to it. But afterwards, I try anybody who I get on the podcast, if I listen to them, I'm like, you have a great voice. You have potential, that type of situation. And so I was like, what? Right? I think you should start a podcast. And then from there, she started asking me questions. What kind of microphone do you need? Oh, you need this type of microphone. It should be this spec. What about headphones? You see, now she's now a podcaster with the headphones. Look at that now. And so everybody and I remember I used to critique your first episodes, right?
Yes.
And so she was like, I what was the advice I gave you? I said, I need more Sonal in
you
your
said it again and again.
podcast.
Yeah.
I need more Sonal because what I'm hearing is not the Sonal that I had in my podcast. I need more of you. And so through how many years have you been doing it?
This is my second year. I'm approaching my 100th episode.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a great accomplishment when you have 100, because that's your portfolio. And what's nice about it is that now with mentoring, I don't have to tell them about myself because it's all I said, look, let's just listen to the podcast. Listen to the first episode, me.
For sure.
Right. So by that time they already know you, and then they already know what to ask. So it really expedites that process there. So they come up to you and they say, like, for example, Brian, I listened to your podcast. I appreciate it so much. And so they come up already with a question. Like, I know you're already this, and this. They know everything about you. So it already eliminates a lot of time. It's already direct. So there's one story that I had that I put on the YouTube channel was nowadays I'm so busy. So basically I'm just like a running train, And so this one person in December, and I put it on the YouTube channel. She was like, Brian, she caught me on Facebook out of all places. Like, I don't connect with anybody on Facebook, but she was very compelling because she was a nurse. She was in a CDI position. She was about to get fired, right? So she says, Brian, I need your help. I need your CDI mind. And so I was compelled to help her. So I helped her, but she got fired, right? I'm trying to make the story short. But in the end, she still connected with me. She still stayed with me because she still had a passion for CDI. Guess what? She has a job now. And so, because of that, she's able to leverage everything that I've shown her. I told her, what, the employer that she had, like, beat her down to the floor. I said, no. Based upon my evaluation, within 2 months of you working, in the situations that you have, I feel you have what it takes. And so with mentoring, even those that are providing the mentoring, you're giving them a spark of hope. You're giving them a little bit of passion. And for those that don't have it. And so I gave that to that person. And now we connect. Like, hey, Brian, I have a CDI question. Sure. And so I haven't done CDI for about 4 years, but that's okay. But I'm going to answer them anyways. I could tell you a lot about auditing. I tell you about denials, but I could try and do the best that I can. And that's the only thing you can do for those that are providing mentoring, to do your best. That's about it.
That's about it. That's about a lot. That's really powerful.
Very impressive.
And that's one thing too. I was thinking about. We don't always. Some of our portfolios, so to speak, are extensive with different specialties and different areas and different. And so even though we may not touch on a certain area for a while, if we get somebody that asks, like if I get somebody that asks me a question, and I'm like, ooh. Well, it's been a minute since I've done that, but, let me go, we know all the research parts and all the places to go to get that valid resource answer from somebody. And those are the kind of things that at least, and I'm sure y'all too, that I'm happy to share with people. And that's why I'll say, well, this is what I found, or on here, like Christine, when I sent that stuff to you, I was like, here's the, here's the thing, and here it is, go look at it. And because we always still, I hear it all, well, show me that where it says that I can't, blah, blah, so I'm like, okay, here you go. So it's always good to be able to do that. And those are the kind of things that those of us that have been doing this for a while, have those kind of, and people are like, what are your secrets? And how do you know? It's not a secret. And I'm happy to, now I don't like it though, when people come and just are kind of like, give me the answer. But if somebody comes to me and says, I've looked here, I've looked here, I've looked here, and I don't quite understand this yet, or I don't think this is right, what do you think? I am much more likely to assist that person. Do y'all feel the same way too? Okay, so that's just another tip.
It was mind blowing to me, like, because in the beginning when I used to start doing this Facebook stuff, you know, people were asking me, "Oh, how do you do this? How do you do this?" And it got so repetitive. I'm like, really? And so I think, you know, one of my pet peeves is I need the answer. I said, no, you're not going to get the answer from me. I am not going to do that. What I can give you, and I love doing this, and sometimes it may be a pet peeve to people. They'll ask me a question, but I'll ask them a question. It's more about figuring out what internally is the problem. Can they identify the problem in itself versus knowing what the problem is, but do they know what the real problem is? Mm-hmm. And then most importantly, can they ask themselves questions to get themselves their own answer? And so I internalize that by asking them questions. Sometimes it's weird, but you know, it works. I am one not to give the answer. I'm one to lay out everything in front of you so you could see it yourself.
Isn't there a proverb that says, or something
something about fish?
Thing?
Yeah. Something about fish and dinner and catfish
fish for a day,
and
they eat for a day, teach them to fish, and they eat forever. Yeah.
With the tartar sauce and all of that, and the lemon. Yeah.
All righty. So we have, believe it or not, we're at the hour already. I know, isn't it incredible? That's the other thing. I start getting on here, and I swear when I first started to do this, I was like, oh, 20, I don't know how I'm going to go 20 minutes. I'm like, even to, and then I get on, and as soon as, people start engaging, and I was just like, whoosh, I could just sit there and talk forever. I said, I got to start making sure I cut myself off. So, but we had a lot of great comments from people, and I think we gave out a lot of advice to people, and I see a lot of thank yous, and that we're
Betty?
Oh, certainly.
I would like for all of the listeners out there, if you're not connected with us on LinkedIn,
great idea,
and not just send it, but send it with a message. Hey, we're having a baby shower this weekend for my new grandson that's coming. So maybe you want to ask how the baby shower went, or just something to connect with each other. And then we can carry that forward. Maybe we'll have lunch.
Yes. Well, Christine, you and I will have to have lunch. That's a cool idea.
We're on the same state, so I don't need a reason to travel, Betty. Call me for lunch. I'll be there.
Oh, cool. Oh, wonderful. That's good. That'll be fun. Yeah. We're getting our dock put in. So when we, get that done, you'll have to, I'll have you over to visit.
Perfect.
So thank you everybody for, joining us, and thank you to my I was looking and I was writing stuff down for this evening, and I was like, oh my gosh, I said, I just realized I was like, I have the Fab Four on tonight. So Christine and Sonal, Vanessa, Brian, thank you so much. A lot of people are putting out thank yous here, and Pam, who else is in Florida? So, we'll just have to get some parties going on. Brian, see, we could get a Florida party going. So thanks everybody. And Alvin said he just sent a connection request to everybody on the panel. And it was great to see you again, Brian. So, and Christian, is that a dog or a cat that's?
He doesn't know.
Oh, it's your little dog. Oh, okay.
He's a cat some days. He's a dog some days. He doesn't know what he wants to be. We've been in the office too long today, so he's ready to go.
Oh, yeah. Well, I will let y'all go then. But thanks, everybody. And you'll be watching for notices of the next broadcast. And I'm not quite sure what guest I'll have on yet, but you'll see. I'll come up with something. I usually do. So thanks
Just have us
everybody.
on
Y'all have a
again,
good
you know?
evening. Oh, most likely. I'm sure every week we would have good turnouts like this. So that's wonderful. So thanks y'all very much. Any closing remarks that y'all want to say to anybody?
Oh, closing remarks at the end of a Friday. Don't be afraid of LinkedIn. Don't be
There
afraid.
you go.
Of
See, it can be
don't
nice and
be afraid
simple.
to reach out. Ask the questions, and don't be afraid of the social media, and don't be afraid of your potential. Just go after it. What you're passionate about and what your dreams are, go after it, because there are going to be 20 other people who are on that same path as well, or have been there, and it can help you along the way. So just do it. Take that first step of faith.
That's great.
Perfect.
The rest of y'all?
Yeah.
That's
Good.
perfect.
All right. Yeah, just do it, right? Was that
right.
Nike, right? All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.